Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I just realized I'm not wearing my Cole Roofing gear. You just have to pretend that I didn't break the mug a couple of months ago. We were out doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour before the holidays, and it's been great, man. Spiked eggnog with Marcella and Rasig, Nick the Greek, and Dara Bungeon over at Coco's, and then Dan Rodericks and my cousin by marriage, John Shields, sat down and talked about the proper Feast of the Seven Fishes for the Italians on Christmas, as well as sauerkraut and kielbasa for the Polish Venezuelan guys like me over in Dundalk. All of it was brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. Fadley's still up. Amici's. Don't tell anybody they don't have a crab cake, but I'm having the crab cake tour there anyway because I love them and it's a little Italy. And by the way, it's the most popular stop. When I offered people, you want to come to Fadley's, you want to meet me at Costas, they all picked Amici's on a Tuesday. So we'll be at Amici's next Tuesday, and then we will be at Costas on Wednesday. And I'm trying to wrangle Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Gina Shock to come back home to Dundalk. So if you see Gina Shock running around Drug City, say, hey, Gina, do Nestor's show next week. I'm just kidding. I love Gina. I got to get up with her. John Allen's not doing the show, by the way, because he's out doing touring and he's been really busy on the road. Who's been busy as well as Bill Cole from Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. Not so busy that he couldn't sponsor the WNST tech service that is now alive and well. And by the way, kudos on that. Every time it comes up, I see Cole Roofing. But more than that, when I'm out, people come up to me and they're like, you turned the tech service back on. Thank God. I'm like, no, don't thank God. Thank Bill Cole.
There you go. No. Yeah, I'm glad to see the tech service. That's good to be back. It's fun. It's a
Well, I mean,
good
sometimes it's good when
institution,
it's an
right?
injury, when it's the player decided to not play last week, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, man. You and I going back and forth from me thinking about running for mayor and the years we've been doing this and community and charity. And by the way, I'm doing my cup of Super Bowl again, Super Bowl week. I'm setting up cool stuff. Dr. Anthony Jenkins from Coppin, one of our great partners, is going to be a big part of that down at Fadley. So we're all like, good things are happening, but it's been a wacky year. If you and I don't get together at the end of this, from the bridge to Trump to just in a general sense that what happened with this murder and a Baltimore connection to this and the CBM family and just from a weird thing, you've been gone 6 weeks. I've met the Orioles owner since the last time you and I got together. You just like evaporated after the Orioles got eliminated. I mean, did you go away to like think about things?
I've been trying to get out of the depressive hole I was in because of that. No, it's just, yeah, no, I think for me, it tends to be that rush from everybody comes back from summertime and you got to get stuff done before Thanksgiving because after Thanksgiving, nobody's really paying any attention. So, no, it's been good and busy and lots of people want to understand solar, so I spent a lot of time explaining how it works, and there's never a shortage of roofs that are in disrepair and need to get fixed, and we
Roofs aren't
genuinely
interesting though.
no,
You know what I
but
mean? Like they're not a
they're
conversation.
like
Solar's this wild conversation. Roofs are like, like it'd be like me talking about radio. Nobody, but podcasting. Oh, well, you're a podcaster. It's funny.
that is interesting. But like roofs are really boring right up until the point where they start leaking, and then
Oh,
it's
then you got
like
to know. Oh, it's not. It's what not
DEFCON
level. I had
5,
that one
yeah,
little area where there
crisis.
was a
Yeah.
seam.
So,
All the stuff you've taught me being my buddy the last 25 years.
yeah. So when that happens, then all of a sudden it's, the number one priority. So we do, our guys and people really enjoy helping people, whatever, solving problems. So it's been busy, fun, good stuff.
I got a
Lots
whole
of
list of things to talk about with you. The Orioles, the Ravens, leadership,
yeah,
college. Like no,
tell me
but
about the owner. Tell me about Mr. Rubenstein. I
oh,
mean,
that's where you
from
want to
a
go. Right off the
well,
bat.
from afar, I find him to be a very interesting character. Like the stuff he does with the, history of the United States, and I mean, he's
How much
he's a
he knows
pretty
about dead
interesting cat.
presidents and like all of
Yeah,
that and the Magna
he's a
Carta and right. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. And
Well,
he's a Baltimore guy, so like that's cool, right?
I don't I'm not in disagreement. I'm just the columnist from the Baltimore Sun or the Baltimore Banner, or what the guy
I
that
mean,
would
is
be
it
Jeff
just a
Rimmer
toy?
taking calls. I mean, I'm thinking about anybody in the history of the media
Right,
here in 40 years of doing what I'm doing. My qualifications, not my credentials, my qualifications to do this are I am one of the top 5, 10, 20, 100, pick yours, number one historian of Oriole baseball that you will find that's still alive, who witnessed it, who saw it, who was there for everything. The reason I exist on the planet, the reason I live here is because my Venezuelan cousin came here and brought his cousin. Here I am. So,
right,
so I have a little bit of a different association to it, like a weird way, and building a sports radio station and being here from the beginning. So I'm not coming at it in any with any animus. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, and to be treated that way by his people as I was 9 months ago, I'm 56 years old. I'm not coming at this like an 18-year-old kid in Dundalk who got his feelings hurt or like I run a business. You're a CEO. I'm a CEO. We spend time around smart people. Smart people listen to this show and are involved, right? And for the life of me, I walk into any room, anywhere I am, and there's no one, whether it's a elected official, a CEO. I went to the events down that your dear friend threw down at the center stage earlier in the month, Baltimore, whether it's GBC, Baltimore Development. Like I talked to all of these people, and they all freely want to come on a show like this and talk about what they do. The sports teams don't want any part of that. And part of that $600 million of welfare, both of these franchises have gotten, they both have had different leadership changes on the Ravens side, on the Orioles side. They are at the tenderloin of everything that builds and grows the city. And I went to a Coppin event down at Center Club the other night, a holiday event with Dr. Jenkins, our partners. You hear the games here and you see the stuff we do in West Baltimore. He said something really poignant that I got to get out of him at Fadley's. He's like, something about West Baltimore that we don't run from West Baltimore. We are West Baltimore. We're here. I don't run from Baltimore, East Baltimore. I'm in the city 3 days a week. I'm at Fadley's today. So there's a point for me where the teams, because there's no criticism from BAL, Jay-Z, these corporately owned out of town things that have a semi-local head, that there is no there's just no there to do anything other than cheer for them. And there's no questions and there's no real press conferences. And they throw a guy like me out after 4 decades and nobody says anything. But I still think those questions are being asked every minute of every day on my timeline. And I could be a real prick, Billy, and pull up right now my Facebook and just pull up the word Orioles yesterday, literally, because they're trying to get money from season ticket holders. And I don't think, no, it's the algorithm or whatever, but I see people, and there are far less people that are in the Birdland Club than have ever been in the Birdland Club. And Katie Griggs inherited the 10,000 empty seats, which I brought up with the owner. I made one mistake with the owner, and I also hit a target with the owner in my 75 seconds that I talked to him, maybe 90 seconds. It was less than 2 minutes that I talked to him. There was a line, I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was just trying to say hello. Um,
Oh, that's how it goes with him. It's like a receiving line. Like he just everybody stands in line
I'll tell you about that in a
call on
minute.
the
But
king, to call on the king.
philosophically,
Yeah.
if you're getting into this with me because you want to it's Christmas and it's cool, because people have been asking me, and I don't have any public line other than what the temperature of the public is. And I would say, I said this to Angelos. I said this to David Modell. I'm just a thermometer, dude. I stick my thermometer into the meat of the city, whether it's at the 15th floor of the Center Club at a Coppin event, or whether it's at Fadley's the next day, or whether it's at Amici's next week, or whether it's in Dundalk, or whether it's this Nacho Mama's closing down, which crazy mothers, crazy. So things that are going on in the community that really hit my soul and hit my timeline. The Orioles and the Birdland thing are one of 100 things that hit my timeline. But when they do, people are pissed off. And they're like, they're trying to raise my money. They want more money from me for less stuff. What about the television? What about the games? What about the leadership? And someone on the timeline wrote the meanest thing I can think. And it wasn't me. And I read it last night in the car. My wife was driving home. Literally, I'm just reading my timeline and I screenshot it. And someone in the peanut gallery, again, I was the one taking the phone calls, which is why Angelos hated me. I heard their complaints and I would take their complaints to management and say, what do you think of this? Like it was like a mailbag and they didn't want to hear it. And they still don't want to hear it. And they still don't want to be nice or say hello or come on the show and tell me about their Birdland membership and tell me about help me help you. You
Right.
know? So someone in the timeline wrote, Bill, it's almost like the Angelos family never left. Just in regard to free agency, we're going to chase Juan Soto, but we're not going to get him. Blake's Nate Eovaldi. I mean, so players and where the payroll's really going to be and where they think Cole Roofing is going to give them $425,000 next year for an advertising package and a skybox. And, like they need a lot of that from a lot of Royal Farms and Wises and banks. And I mean, I always say the old WBAL model was Provident Bank, Mercantile Bank, First National Bank. It's like all of these banks and the colleges and the hospitals and whatever that lifted the Orioles to the Cal Ripken, Brooks Robinson heights, that lift the Ravens every day in the, you know, north of Grumman and the people that support the Ravens and buy skyboxes and like all of the stuff that goes on there. And the league is so fat. The NFL is so fat. Baseball has to figure it out. And my observations, Bill, were that the night before the election, and this is how long it's been since you and I mean, you and I haven't chatted since literally October. Um, Bill Cole's our guest, by the way, Cole Roofing, one of our great partners and friends. Beth Philo had a speaker series. By the way, it's called the Stanley Penn Speaker Series. I'm like, I knew Stanley Penn from Penn Pontiac in Dundalk, right down the street from me. So one of the endowment foundation for the temple and for the synagogue is that every year they do a speaker. Every year it's the Stanley Penn thing. So this wasn't like a special David stopping by. He was the speaker in an ongoing thing where for years and years they've done this thing. He was the selected person. He made time to come do it, and very young rabbi, beautiful speech. Um, I had been in the room before, incidentally, and Mark Remb. I mean, I was greeted by there were 100 people in the room I knew, and they all came up, gave me love. Dave Warshawski, just a lot of people were there that I knew, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Rubenstein's speaking, and it's free." Greg Ash invited me. Bruno Sammartino, he knows who he knows. He sent me a Facebook note in the middle of a football game on a Sunday. He's like, "Hey, David Rubenstein's speaking. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, sure, like, sure, I'll come. So I went over and I sat and listened to, he did the 30 to 40 minute speech that he gives about his life that I think he's given 100 times, right?
Right.
I'm a
Right.
kid from Baltimore. Dad was a postman, went to city,
Right.
very sort of, I don't want to say faux humble, whatever, just sort of self-effacing, sort of
Right.
very like, I didn't mean to become a billionaire. It just sort of happened. The
Right.
story, right? I went here and failed. I worked for Jimmy Carter, failed. Failed. I wasn't good enough to be a lawyer, but like he went through all of this, right? What his mother expected from him, and got a lot of laughs because he's in a Jewish synagogue and he was,
Sure.
it was fun, right? Then he sat with the rabbi who performed my role, which was interviewing him, right? And it was very, um, speaker series, right? So, and the questions were sort of baked into here are the 5 or 6 things
Right.
we're going to talk about, right?
Right.
My couple of observations for you, if we're just, by the way, dude, we did our Christmas party, you and me, at Nacho Mama's last year. Where are we going to do it this year?
I don't know.
We got to do it at Nacho Mama's because they don't close till the end of, till January. We got to do it.
Right.
I'm just thinking, like, if you and I were having fajitas and you would ask me this, I would tell you this. There were a few really interesting observations. One, he doesn't know anything about baseball. Uh, and I'm not being mean. He's just been busy making money. Steve Bisciotti always said, put the 10,000 hours in. By the way, I figured out I put 250,000 hours into this, into being a sports media host. But I did the math on that. So the 10,000 hours that you put into doing what you need to do, he admitted on stage that he went to 38 baseball games this year. And he said that was 38 more than he'd been to the last 50 years.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, that would be like me buying an opera and trying to get caught up, or me buying a rugby team and not even knowing the rules and trying to get caught up. I'm convinced he knows the rules of baseball. I'm convinced he might have watched baseball as a kid. I'm convinced he wants to be famous, thought this was a good way to make money, thought this was a good way to, fire up a 74-year-old ego and checkbook and do something that I think he really believes is philanthropic, which is bring people into the city and write
Right,
checks on behalf of the Orioles, and what the Orioles can do is more powerful than what a guy named Rubenstein can do. The brand of it, you know what I mean? Like that it
right.
has this cachet. And I think if I sat with him, that's what I would maybe get out of it.
The
He's not
civic
moving
stimulus.
here. Yeah, he's not
Yeah,
moving here and beating the streets and bringing people back. He's going to zoom in, do one of these sittings for hundreds of people, either like a political thing where you have to pay to be there, or he's going to give hats out at the stadium and they're going to take pictures of it. But he's not going to be a mover and shaker in what free agent to sign. I'm not convinced he would have bought the Washington Nationals. He admitted that. He was going to do something with Ted Leonsis. He didn't. He he had a chance to buy the Orioles. He knew John Angelos, whom he has a lot of respect for. So my interaction with him, and this honestly, Bill, I'm would it make me a bad journalist, a bad citizen, a bad guy to say I'm not really seeking out another handshake with him or a picture or a selfie or have him sign my baseball or whatever? You know what I mean? Like I'm just not. Like I don't I stood in line peacefully behind a dozen people who all wanted to take pictures and they had baseballs they wanted signed. They just wanted to say hello. It really was a greeting line, right? Like he
right.
was on the stage in the same stage that Don Felder sang heavy metal on, which I loved. And people just really respectfully filed out. It wasn't like there
Right.
were 300-400 people there, and there were probably 30 who wanted to like say hello in some way. A lot of older folks. It was the night before the election. It was, 9 o'clock at night by the time it was busting up. People just, when it ended, they left. But most of them. And I went down and I waited because I didn't want a selfie. I wanted an interaction. And I said, Mr. Rupstein, I said, I'm Nestor Aparicio. I said, my cousin, literally just like this. My cousin played in for the Orioles, Luis Aparicio. Oh yeah, yeah. I said, yeah, you referenced him. I said, I appreciate that he was one of your favorite players. That when you think of him, I said, I've owned a sports radio station here for almost 40 years, and I'd like to have a relationship. We'll call Chris Ullman. I was like, okay. Didn't read the letter, know that much, and so I just said to him, I said, everything I said to Chris Ullman, I said to him, I said, there's been a lot of trauma here. And I said, and I should have mentioned the letter. I should have said, I wrote you a letter. I hope you read it. I did not say that to him. I wish I would have. That's my regret. But I did say to him, there's been a lot of trauma here. And with the old ownership, and I got swept up in that. And I said, I just want you to know, I want what's good for you and for the city. I love the baseball team. I love the Orioles. And I said, but those 10,000 empty seats that you saw in the playoffs, that's the trauma. And I said, I'd like to help you with that. And he moved on to the next person in line.
He didn't even respond. He didn't even respond.
He just
Like he didn't
moved.
say
He just see
if
in
I
the
didn't
old
really want
days
to if
with
I
the
didn't really want to
Orioles.
talk to you, I would have said something along the lines of, "That's very kind of you. We have a lot of people working on that. It's really important to us, and I appreciate the interest." And I would have moved on. And I mean that's to be dismissive, but
Yeah, he
kind,
wasn't being
right?
handled. I'm being honest with you. I think
Yeah.
he got in his car and drove up. You know what I mean? Like from
Yeah,
where he
yeah,
lives.
yeah.
I don't.
Sure.
He had no
I
other
get
than the
that.
security in a temple, which is there's
Right.
security in every restaurant I walk into now. That it's just like there was serious security at the temple, right? Other than that, there was no. I mean, and you get when you walk in the building, there's metal detectors, right? Like so, there's none of pokey pokey going on. But usually, and this is what I would say to him. And this is what I would say to you or anyone who loves me or knows me or waits in line to come say hello to me. And like which has happened, thankfully. And I'm, like people do sort of gather to speak and like
Right.
I try to be nice to everybody, right? So I didn't want to come at him in that way. I would just say that for for me, I the acknowledgement of what they're doing corporately across the board. And I guess that falls to Katie Griggs now, right? Like she's going to be the head of this. It has not been nearly as visible over the last 60 days as it needs to be in an off season. And I don't mean spending money and doing stuff. I just mean like in a general sense of it needs to look and feel different. And I've written that. And when Mr. Rubenstein moved on from me on the days, I just moved on and I thought, okay, like I'm not trying to influence people and win friends. I'm just trying to be like helpful. And everything I said to Chris Ullman is I said, we all want the same things. That's the thing I said to both of them. We all want the same things. We want the team to be vibrant. I mean, I remember it being vibrant like this, and I think being the thermometer out on the street and feeling it, I'm not I think they've had a golden chance here as a takeover to take over, and I don't think it's gone well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not being. That's not for me. I didn't. I don't care whether it goes well for me. I'm just seeing selling more tickets, selling more enthusiasm, signing players, getting in, feeling new, feeling fresh. Where's Cal Ripken? Where's the players? Where's Gunner? It's the offset. And like we're up on Christmas and now it'll be January and then it'll be spring training and we're back to who's going to the ballpark.
Well,
And I
everybody
and
took,
that worries me, Billy. It
right.
does.
Everybody took the call. I think everybody approached it with the same optimism that you just described, right? Like Cal took the call. Sure, I'll do some commercials. Sure, I'll come down. Is there a plan? Is it sustainable? Are we really changing the trajectory? I listening to you talk, Ness, like you have a very um deep appreciation for the need of independent media. And I'm just gonna pull us out of like the Orioles specifically, but I do want to try and understand your perspective because you mentioned a while ago BAL or Jay-Z or whoever it is, right? Like the only message that is allowed to be said is, positivity and like support for the teams. And I
If
guess
you're going to
my
be Katie Griggs and go on BAL and take phone calls and not talk about the 10,000 empty seats in the playoff games, you're really, and not having a real answer for that. You know what I mean? Like, and I would just, and I've said this every minute since last time you and I got together. It bothered me to see the empty seats. And all they've
sure,
done is hate me for 20 years as a citizen, as someone that invested in downtown, as someone that's last name's Aparicio. It hurt me on behalf of Brooks Robinson. It hurt me on behalf of Earl Weaver. It hurt me
right,
as a citizen. And it needs to hurt somebody there. You know what I mean? It needs to bother TJ Brightman, Greg Bader, whoever's running the place needs to say that's not we that we need to do better and in every way. We need Nestor and his wife there. We need Bill Cole there and his kids. We need to get them off the soccer ball and get them on the softball diamond. And like I don't. There's just it's Herculean. I'm not
I get
saying
it.
this is a small thing that Katie Griggs has taken on, and I'll continue to be respectful to her to the point where when I shake her hand and she walks the other way and gets handled by their PR in a way that Mr. Rubenstein didn't, and I didn't press it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't reporter him and go back with a million questions in the middle of a
Right.
synagogue. I was just trying to shake the man's hand and let him know that I cared. And I did, but I didn't point out that I wrote him a letter because the letter real I read the letter again the other day just to make sure that I was where I needed to be. And I just gave the facts of like how he said, call Chris Ullman. And I'm like, okay, you want my Chris Ullman story? Here it is.
Right.
Like, there it is. And he whistles beautifully. And I'm sure he's a great corporate communications guy and a nice professor. But these are not Baltimore people. No offense. And I don't want to sound like Charlie Ekman, but they're not Baltimore people. And at some
Yeah.
point, Baltimore people are going to be the people that rescue the Orioles and rescue everything in Baltimore.
I don't know that we have like a monopoly on the people who are able to save the things in Baltimore. My only question is
In order to
how do
save the Orioles,
we
you have to come to Baltimore. We can agree on that, right?
yes, I
Okay.
totally agree with
All
that.
right. Well, then,
I if the answer to all the things you're saying is we have to change the messaging around the Orioles and that the brand needs to be positive and everything that needs to be said is positive. If that's the tactics that they're choosing to use, right?
and then Mr.
Which
Angelo's never existed.
all of it. We're not going to mention anything about the bad because we need to get the story to say everything is good. And if we convince everyone that everything is good, then they will come. The question I have is okay, if that's the tactic, right, that leaves no room for criticism because that's ruining the brand that we're trying to create. We don't have time for any negative questions. Everything is positive, positive, positive. If that is
Well, that's why I
their
got thrown out of the. I mean, you can hear Chad Steele in the press conferences saying no more questions about the quarterback, and me saying, "What in Chicago?"
I
So
know.
like I'm with
But
you.
how do
Yes.
you, okay, so if that is the tactic that they are choosing to use, how do you push back on that and say, well, no, because the reason that won't work is because the fan base is smart enough to see through your BS. The pricing is so high that the people you're talking to buy are sophisticated enough to see through your BS. Like they just are
They had a
still,
real
it's the
problem in the
same.
playoffs selling a corporate guy like you a
Right.
$125 playoff ticket that was then being offered for $15 the day of the game. And I heard it. I was at the Beaumont that night. Everybody at the bar was
Right.
like, how much did you pay? How much did you pay? Like, I can't believe tickets were 15 or $20. And
Right.
I got snookered into paying a buck and a quarter and there were 10,000 empty seats. Like I heard a lot of that. And that
Sure.
is, look, man, I haven't heard people talking about the Orioles much at all in the last 20 years, right? Like
I agree.
literally, it is the problem that they have. And they've brought in someone who, when I looked her up on LinkedIn, I offered her a link. We have three mutual connections in the whole world before she came here, Katie Griggs. And I'm thinking, I know everybody in the city for better or worse. I've had three or four like literal sports executive types who've done PR, who've done marketing say, me, I should be the first one they make up with. Like, just give him a pass and let him come in. How much harm could he? Like, I'm not here to
Right.
knock China over. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not. I'm really not. I'm literally here with a notebook as a 56-year-old citizen, an FCC license holder, a man who's employed people, who's had a wife almost die twice, a guy who's got a 40-year-old kid. You think I'm here to be Barstool Sports and be an ass? Like I'm here literally to say, what are you doing with the $600 million? What are you really going to do with the payroll? You really playing small market? You're going to play that game? Sell it to me. Tell me why you're small market, and I'll write that down and sell it out to the people. But you're not going to tell me what to write. And if the presupposition is that everything I'm going to write has to be positive, or you're going to throw me out, then just don't bother letting me in. I mean, I don't know what else to say at this point other than you have 10,000 empty seats in your upper deck. And I'm not being a jerk asking questions about that. I am being, I love you and I want you to get better. I'm challenging you to say, what's the strategy other than throwing people like me out?
Right. But
What other strategy do
understand,
you have
right.
to get people in? And
The
I'm more concerned about
actual,
their media than anything else, by the way. I'm more concerned about
the,
just getting your kids watching the game on TV so they might want to go.
right. But understand that the actual uh sea change, tidal wave, societal move, whatever you want to call it, that you're actually fighting against is this concept. And you know this all too well because of the brief but impassioned discussions we have about Donald Trump. Like, if they say it enough, it must be true because social media is a revolving door of an echo chamber, right, where people only hear the things that they want to hear. So that is a tactic, right? That is an actual strategy that some blame on like the Russian
But
Putin
that's not
news,
filling it
like,
up. And anybody that knows anything about sports knows that it's the criticism that sold it. Period.
yeah,
That's it.
I think
And whether and
the
the gambling
idea,
part of it
but you have
needs a whole different avenue
right.
with gambling.
But
Yeah.
we actually have to come up with the kryptonite for this, right? Because everyone in power continues to do this. They don't need to be held accountable because the echo chambers in their universe can just make it true. And no one has figured out a way to break through that and say, well, no, actually, you need neutral, you need both sides of every discussion. You need to talk about those things because we are actually intellectual human beings. And we know that not everything is
Well,
great about the Orioles,
I,
but
I'll
we just
leave
want
it.
to
I'll
know that
leave
you're
it at
going to get
this.
better.
I'll leave it at this. And because you do have to go, and I love you, Bill
Right.
Cole, Cole Roofing. We don't get together often enough. Happy holidays. Please get me a mug, the little one, not the big
It's
one.
on my list. I know.
Thank
I
you.
know.
Santa would
Uh,
like, that's all I
yes.
want for
Uh-huh.
that, and good texts on Oriole News from Cole Roofing. But Trump said last week, and I don't hear much of what he says, and I don't really need to hear another word he says, quite frankly. But he said something that in an interview wound up on my social media, where somebody said, "Did you lose the election or you lost the election?" You lost the election. It's a fact. He lost the election in 2020, and he said, "That's your opinion." And I think now that is just where we are. So the fact
Right.
that the Orioles lost for 5 years and nobody's going, just my opinion. The fact that the ticket prices are too much, that's just my opinion. The fact that putting games on Friday nights on Apple TV where nobody can find them or would care to watch them, just my opinion. The fact that the Birdland memberships went up by 20% and it took the points away, just my opinion. Like so
Like we
10,000 empty
lost
seats. We'll wash those away. We'll take the $600 million and build a club up there. So we only have 34,000 seats in the stadium. So we'll find one way to erase that. We'll just put less seats on the plane.
we lost this idea that the criticism and the challenges is what makes the eventuality better, right? Like here's what we're doing. Oh, why don't you do this? Hey, shut up over there. No, actually, that comment is what makes things better, right? Is everyone challenging the norm. So yeah, I think
Well,
it's
that's why you
really
support
not
me,
things aren't going to get any better.
I guess, because I'm
Well,
still here, like saying, "Hey, man, let's make the team better." Like
I
I'm not here
support
to
you
be. That's the
because
weird thing is I want the team to win, but
I
I also want
support
them to be
you.
kind and I want them to back up what they mean about community when they're getting money from us. That's all.
Right. I support you. One, because there are many things that you give me a different perspective than the way I see things. So I'm always searching for alternate perspectives. Two, I know that genuinely deep in your heart, despite playing the nasty character for some large portion of your life, you actually want our town to be a prosperous, wonderful place for people to live, play, and everything. So, and I will support anybody that I know genuinely in their heart wants that, right? I'm on board. I'm part of that team. So
I'm
it's
going to
fun
use
stuff.
that in every speech from now on. Bill Cole can be found in the documentary about my wacky no one listens, everyone hears. He can also be found as a prime mover and expert in the solar space. We'll bore you with that conversation another time, but it is important, and roofing is important this time of year. Temperature changes, cracks happen, all of that. If you are a business out there, Cole Roofing is always there for you. Billy, hit the road, brother. I will see you in another 8 weeks when we can figure this out. But
Yeah,
by the time we get
appreciate
together again,
it.
Santa will have come down the roof, the Ravens will be eliminated, and Trump will be running the country.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
That's a lot to look forward to. I am Nestor. He is Bill Cole. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive.